And we're back. We just changed our clothes and freshened up.
No,
just
we're not.
Like
We're
last
not.
week.
Wait, what?
We just changed our clothes and freshened up. We
Yes,
hid under
exactly.
the desk for
We
a
hid
week.
under the desk
For you.
for you. We stay here. We don't go anywhere.
Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. We're glad you're here.
What is it, Eric, right?
Yeah.
Eric,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
Eric.
it still is.
Is it half an Eric this week or just partially Eric?
I don't know. There's a rumor in the air that only half an Eric is going to be here.
It's
So
like floating in this chair.
I sent my doppelganger just to kind of make you happy.
You know what we need is.
By the way, this is Representative Gary Hopper. He's a neat guy.
We need a cardboard cutout of each other.
We do.
Right, so that like
do.
if something
And we can-
happens, you have to
we
go
can
out and take
hold
a
it up.
phone call, or you had to go like last week. Just put the cardboard cutout there and walk off stage.
We'll have to pick a different pose each week.
Yeah, well, if you made it like flexible, so you could, yeah.
That'd be funny.
John,
Yes, I'm
We
here.
have some wonderful guests. And now we're going to tell you who they are.
Representative John Burt
Yes.
is here because he was on the last show, and I said, "Hey, John, stick around." And he said, "Okay," because we're talking about the Constitution and right to work and right to know, which
Right
is
to
like,
know. And that's very dear to me because there's a lot of secrets in government.
Yes, there are.
and you have a right to know.
The selectmen in Goffstown dictate everything they're going to do behind closed doors, and then they go out in the public and talk of what they want to talk about.
Whoa, no, they wouldn't do that. That would be deceitful. So next to Sir John of Burt, the representative from Goffstown, you represent Goffstown, Ware, and Deering. Are you signing up again?
Yes, I'm hoping
Okay,
to
so you're
tomorrow.
signing up. I signed up today to be a state rep again.
No, I had that other job that, pays some of the bills, so I had to do that instead.
I thought that's why you married a rich lady.
Well, yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah,
And good looking.
yeah, I know. Double.
Yes.
Anyway, and next to him is Harriet Cady, who is a state legislator in 2004 and six. To six, and is just like a warrior for the taxpayers. Really,
Yeah.
I mean, you're out there fighting. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, so I see you all the time. You never bring me coffee, which is kind of disappointing, because I like, it's how,
What makes it her job to bring you coffee?
Well, the
because she
problem
wants me to
is
vote a
there's
certain way.
There's a sign that
right?
says,
Payola.
If you
no
want me to
drinks
vote a
in this
certain,
room.
Well, there it is.
if you want me to vote a certain way,
They got to bring
you
you coffee.
got to bring me coffee.
So we got to give you caffeine, which is a drug.
It's a drug.
So
I
it's-
need to
it's a
be
drug
drugged.
deal.
And I have to look this up because I got brain
This
damage.
is on record, folks.
This is some lady that I just met tonight. I thought I've met you before, but I guess I was wrong because you don't remember me. And I just might have, it's probably the brain damage kicking in. Dianne Gilbert Spidle. And you are you are the chairwoman for the National Center for Constitutional Studies.
Close,
I was close?
close.
Okay.
Harriet gave you some bad information, didn't she?
Well, I'm not going to say
or
that out
perhaps
loud.
incomplete. If you would,
NHCCS.
Yeah.
No, I'm not
If you
going to
would
say
help us.
that because if she does bring me coffee, I will not really trust what's in it.
Right.
So anyway, what is your official title?
Starting with my name, I go by Dianne Gilbert. I am married, so it is Dianne Gilbert Spidle, but that's kind of a long stretch.
Right.
And I, too, was in politics and active. And when I got married, I kept the Gilbert because in my heart of hearts, I didn't think it was fair to confuse my political enemies.
Right. Yeah, you can't. That's not fair. It's
No.
not fair, really.
Because it is easy to do.
Not at all.
Yes.
And I do chair an organization called the National Heritage Center for Constitutional Studies.
Is that related to the Heritage Foundation or no?
No,
Okay.
not at all, except that we think alike.
Okay. So what is that organization? How did you get involved in that?
I actually co-founded it back in 1997. So
Okay.
we're just a little over 20 years old now, in our 21st year.
congratulations.
What is the
We have an educational mission,
okay?
strictly education.
Is that Phyllis Woods associated with that?
No, she's attended many of our events, but
Because I remember her talking about something like that. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
Diane's group, their main thing is to teach people that the Constitution of the United States and of New Hampshire, but she teaches the U.S., are the people's work orders for
absolutely.
whatever is in that
It's a
is
job
what they can
description.
do. And if it's not in there, It's
can't
not
do
in the
it.
Constitution, they can't do it.
Right.
And they think many times, if it's not there, then I can do it.
Yeah.
And this last year, one of the problems I had was the group I came to talk about, New Hampshire Municipal Association, got a bill introduced. And the bill they got introduced was to change the Constitution so we'd have home rule. The worst thing you could do,
Okay, so let's unpack that.
For those at home, what does that term mean? So they'd have home rule.
home rule is what they have in Maine. And when John Andrews came here to become the president and executive director of New Hampshire Municipal, he wanted the home rule because with the legislature held together by the Constitution of New Hampshire, they couldn't vote an income tax. They couldn't vote a sales tax. So
So, okay, well, I'm gonna.
that's what they,
Okay, so home rule for people at home is the Constitution delegates authority over the laws of the state to the New Hampshire legislature, period. A town cannot write its own rules or its own laws. In other words, the city of Manchester cannot write a law that prohibits us from owning firearms. That is entirely up to the state, and the state is in control. Home rule means it would take that power away from the state, and the town could do whatever they wanted. So very liberal cities, John and I would be going shooting someplace, drive through Portsmouth, get pulled over, and all of a sudden we're violating some town
Some
or city
local
ordinance
statute, yeah.
that we can't possibly even know about.
and that would be the big problem with it this year
That's
when
what
they
home
tried
rule
to
is, though.
pass it, because they would have different rules in the different towns. It's one of the reasons why we shouldn't have but one person cancel a town meeting, which is now delegated to the Secretary of State.
Right.
But if you can have different towns doing different things, you're going to have a real mess in understanding what happened.
With home rule, the towns or the cities could not pass a law or a regulation that would violate the New Hampshire Constitution. You can't do that. That's the highest law in the state.
Right.
But if they did, and they could, because most of what I've seen at the local level, the level of constitutional integrity is, maybe this big.
Yeah.
They just don't know what they're doing. And they would do something like that, and then you go through the process of trying to undo it. So it was a terrible idea, especially with people so constitutionally ignorant.
Right.
Not stupid, ignorant.
And the
By
municipal
design.
association itself wanted this law passed, so
they
they
pushed
submitted
it.
it as a bill.
They pushed
They
and
can't.
pushed
Who did they
it.
get- who did
can't
they
the
sponsor it?
legislator do
Yeah,
it
who
for
did
them.
who did they get to do it for them?
Yeah.
I don't recall that.
Any
I
idea?
don't either. I know,
But it was a national group, one that was based in,
Yeah, but still, the national
know the
group can't
bill
do it
number?
either.
no.
it was
The
a year
opposition
ago
came
from this
from a
last
nationally
session,
based
and it was a
group.
Oh, okay,
CACR.
okay.
I'm trying to think of the name of it. What was the name of the nationally based group that put up the biggest opposition to it? I think it had the word money in the title. Do you remember?
No.
I know, I can look that all up, but tonight
just a
I
bad
came
idea.
prepared to talk about how, as I said last week, the municipal association most often lobbies against what is good for you and I, the average citizen. In other words, the problem is they have an executive board made up of employees. And
Yep.
as I gave you the example last week, the
Government
employee-
employees. Government
Right,
employees.
town and so forth, and school employees. And if it's something that they don't want to work harder, or they think it would make them work harder, they ask the New Hampshire Municipal to lobby against it. There's also the fact that the New Hampshire Municipal inserts into the committee ideas
Okay, so.
to give them more
Okay, I
power.
gotta, because not everybody has watched last week's show. So you have the municipal association. Most cities and towns in the state of New Hampshire pay the municipal association. Your taxpayers go to pay for it, and they have a board, and they have a lobbyist, and all this money comes from all the different towns and cities, and pays them to go to the State House to lobby to protect the interest of the town or city. That's what they're supposed to do. In other words, if there's a bill that John and I put forth that's going to harm the city or town, they're supposed to be there fighting against it. But it's far more corrupt than that. And like you said last week, how much is the lobbyist for the county municipal?
$160,000.
The guy makes 106. They're taking your tax dollars,
Your property tax.
your
dollars.
property tax dollars, paying some guy $160,000 a year
He's just one.
to go up to Concord. Yeah, just one to go up to Concord and fight against your interest.
Of many.
That's right. And I think if you take the 40,000-foot view, they roll up into national cities and towns. I think that's the title, which is based in D.C. So what these organizations like the NHMA do is extend the reach of the federal government right down into the municipalities.
Okay.
It's insidious. We talk about the swamp in D.C. You got a swamp right here in New Hampshire.
The interesting thing that
Everywhere.
Diane's just talking about, we have the National Association of Cities and Municipalities. They belong to the International. And one time, about 12 years ago, I'm looking at the town manifest and I see $5,000 for our town clerk. What? To go to the International Conference of Municipalities in
Wow.
Holland.
Holland?
So we paid for her and her husband to go to Holland.
I want to
Hotel
go.
and everything. Well, join with them.
Why
The
can't we do
purpose of
that?
serving their municipality, how exactly?
I would like to know what Holland's and the World International contributed to Deerfield. I didn't see a thing change after she went.
That sounds like a cool gig. John,
Yes.
we're missing the
They
boat here.
have-
We are totally screwing up. I'm just looking for free coffee. These guys are really, man.
They're going to Holland.
I know, they're going to Holland.
good coffee.
Gee.
Well, it's not just that. When they go, for instance, Dianne had a town manager or town administrator named Fonier. Steve Fonier now is the town administrator in Newmarket.
Yeah.
He went to Colorado to a national conference.
Aw.
And I don't know if you paid for it or
I
Northwood
imagine
paid
I
for it.
did, knowing what my tax bill looks like.
Diane was a
every year.
selectman in Epping for a while. She watched them pretty close. But I printed out from my town alone for dues, conferences, and so forth. Deerfield pays the New Hampshire Municipal $33,252. Deerfield alone,
Wow.
plus add to that the days off that the employee takes to go to these conferences and seminars, plus mileage. We pay their mileage.
In meals, I imagine. Or
And
the
meals.
meals are included
Yeah,
or whatever.
meals. Yeah. So anyways,
You know, most of those conferences also, well, as time goes on, it seems to me that most conferences such as that, not necessarily, okay, let me preface that, because I haven't been to that one. A lot of these conferences are just scams. They're just ways of people making money, making conferences, so that the people, people put on these different things, make money, and the people putting on the conference make money, and everybody makes money, and the taxpayer holds gets to pay for it.
Insidiously,
Yeah,
because
that's the second time you said insidious.
Yes, because it is. We send people,
Insidious.
Insidious, yes.
we send this money up through our tax dollars, our property tax, to support these organizations. And there's an organization for almost every public position. So the town clerk has it, the tax collector has it, the accountant has it,
Planning board,
planning board has it,
Building
the fire
code,
has it,
police chief.
have it. Seriously, I mean, they get some serious money per
secretaries,
town.
administrative assistants.
Exactly.
Has anybody put forth a petitioned warrant article to require anybody going to any conference that pertains to their job, that they are required to pay for that themselves, and it should,
It has been put forth in some towns, but here's
has
the
it
problem.
ever passed?
The lawyer has told the selectmen in my town that that is a decision of the selectmen. You cannot have a petitioned article that would take the decision-making that is entitled to the selectmen. So the selectmen can decide, or your town alderman, or your town councilors, whatever.
Isn't that the purpose, but forgive me for asking, but maybe this is a bit naive, but isn't that the purpose of a warrant article? So that a particular issue can be put before the general public?
Yes, Eric, and as I said before, Senate Bill 506 that got killed by a city senator last week ended up saying they couldn't change a petitioned article in an SB2 town because he somehow eliminated SB2 towns operate under RSA 40:13.
SB2 towns being?
Towns that vote all the budget on the ballot. They do not go to these gym meetings or wherever the building is and
SB2
stand there and defend something they're saying before all the teachers union or
I see.
all the police union. And let's face it, some people are intimidated in these meetings because they know they're going to be driving on the road, the police are looking at it. If they irritate a police officer,
I know, my wife and I got a petitioned warrant article in where to have the chief of police position become an elected one.
Well, I did that too.
I did that
Do you
too.
want to know what happened to it? To Harriet's point, the police chief got up and said, and let's make this effective in the year 2023.
Right.
That was back in 1995.
Well, you know what happened at mine is the Chief Rigney, went to the microphone and he had, you know, if you do a background check, the papers are not 8.5 by 11, they're 8.5 by 14,
Legal,
right?
yeah.
They're legal documents. He holds up a stack of them and said, if you've seen the records of the people that signed this petition warrant article, they have records as long as my arm.
Talk about intimidation.
Even his supporters, one of his prime supporters, because I'm at one of the microphones, looking at him, and he goes like this, right? The union leader was sitting in that room at that meeting and said nothing.
Yeah.
They said nothing, but
And so-
because of his insanity and arrogance, it passed through the deliberative session unamended, so it ended up on the ballot, and he had to run for office if he wanted to stay in office and stay
So he
chief.
shot himself in the foot.
Oh, wicked bad,
Yeah,
yeah, but
yeah,
he also
okay.
violated everybody's constitutional rights.
But now to throw more fuel on the fire.
Good.
Do you think for a moment?
That's insidious.
Insidious.
That's incendiary.
This is
Incendiary.
insidious. Think about this now. Do you think for one moment that spokesman, or
microphone has you.
whoever it was, the police chief, whoever it was that stood up, do you think he put all that together by himself, or do you think maybe he had a little help preparing that
I don't
presentation?
think so. You know why?
Why?
Because if he had any help, any reasonable help, somebody who cared or wanted him to stay in office, they would have said, A, you can't do background checks on people who petitioned the government. B, if you do this, it's probably quite illegal.
You violated civil
You
rights.
violated people's civil rights, and the federal government might get involved. So I think he was just that arrogant,
Being stupid.
being really stupid.
But the New Hampshire Municipal Association does help,
Yes.
or, towns skirt around the laws, because I sat in on a meeting.
Okay, explain
Yes.
yourself, because you haven't
And
got a,
that's where I was going.
okay, yeah, but he hasn't had a couple words in edgewise, so go
Well,
for it,
Well,
John.
first, what you said at the beginning is that the New Hampshire Municipal Association would defend if I put or you put a bill against the town. I want to rephrase that, if you don't mind.
No,
if-
no.
If I put in a bill to protect the taxpayers from the town, the New Hampshire Municipal
true, too.
Association will attack me
That's right.
to try to protect the taxpayers. That is the truth.
Yeah, it
And
is.
here's the perfect example of it.
Okay,
I pulled this from the April 20th legislative bulletin that every legislator gets weekly from the New Hampshire Municipal Association, telling them their position on the bills and what they think they ought to do. This article, last year, and just passed, and it's on the governor's desk for signature. For those of you who don't know, a town is allowed to charge 18% interest after 6 months if you don't pay your tax bill.
right.
Yes.
12% for the first 6 months. Well, that's made the towns a lot of money, but it's hurt an awful lot of towns.
Oh, yeah, it completely bankrupt people.
People
We
lose their
have a
homes.
situation
Yeah.
in Deerfield, property that the man died and the heirs were paying as much in taxes as they could, and it now owes over $200,000 and is being taken for taxes.
Sure.
Most of it's interest, the tax collector told me. Anyways, the New Hampshire Municipal wrote this article. They were strictly against House Bill 1673, which was to reduce that 18%.
Yeah, that percent should be just a couple points above prime, that's
You
it.
and I think alike, Gary. They,
Exactly.
back in the days when the interest was 4% and the to borrow was 14%, remember the 70s?
Yeah.
Well, people were paying bills with their tax money instead of paying the taxes, saying, I've got 3 years to pay them. So property taxpayers who promptly paid their bills were supporting those who didn't pay. But instead of having it reduced after the interest went down
To
from
reasonable.
the Federal Reserve, the New Hampshire Municipal has lobbied against it being reduced ever since. I made the point that I did believe they should be a little bit above, like 2 points.
Yeah, something. So It
And-
should be, they shouldn't lose money.
Shouldn't be usury.
Right.
Right, it was usury. And I
Explain
gave
that
us a-
word.
Usury means charging an interest that is
Excessive.
above ability for people to pay. It's like the gangsters used to loan
Didn't the
somebody
mafia
money.
do that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what the
loan
mobsters
sharks
did.
and all that
And
kind of stuff.
the government said that mafia cannot do that, correct?
Right.
But the
Yeah,
government
pretty
should
The
do it.
government can't.
Well, as an example,
Of course,
when I
they call it VIG.
testified, I used that 2 years ago, the legislature railed against the paycheck loans and the car loans because they had 25 and 30% interest. And I said, what do you think this is?
Right.
18%.
Oh, I
So-
know, I think I got, my HRA score went down on that one because I voted to, because again, it's usury. When you take advantage of people that owe you money, that's usury.
Exactly.
And I voted to reduce the amount that those payday, same day or payday lenders
Yep.
were getting, because it was just, it was abusive.
It
It was
was.
not,
Right.
hey, John, if I go to John, say, John, I really need $100 right now. He says, okay, but you gotta pay me back with interest. If I paid him back a week later and he charged me like $3 or $4 for borrowing the $100, I get that. But if he charges me $150 for borrowing $100, that's abusive.
And that's usury.
So that's why I don't borrow money from you, John.
Yes.
Well, John's a very nice legislator. He gets a party on for the legislators every year at no cost. They bring something if they want to, and it's called Hot Dog Day at the legislature.
It
And
is, the
somebody
famous hot dog
donates
day.
Yes.
potato salad or macaroni salad and whatever.
Were you there this year?
No, I wasn't,
You
but
should.
I always know what John's doing.
Wow.
Somebody make sure
John
to
has a
tell me.
stalker.
Sees you when you're sleeping.
Yes.
She goes when you're away.
Anyways,
Well, can I first say something about Harriet, if you don't mind? I know I can't hurt your feelings. You know, when I first met Harriet was in my first term in 2010.
Yeah.
I was on the municipal and county government committee, which was a terrible committee. They still are. I'm sitting there, and when Harriet would come in, I could see the people, you know, the reps that have been there a while, I could see them going,
Here we go.
and I was like, okay, this lady's got my interest. And she would get up there and speak the truth, and I'm going, why were they not happy with what she just said? She just spoke the truth. But then I was voting with, with her speech in my head. I'm going, yes, this is right. So I would vote the appropriate way, and everybody else would vote against it. And I'm like, okay.
Was that your first term?
That was my
Oh,
first
so that
term.
was.
That was your
this.
first
Oh, so
Yeah,
this.
so I'm sorry I interrupted.
So, no, it gets better, because those votes would come to the House, and instead of saying it was 13-1, the common.
15 to 1.
15-1, it would be commonly called 15 to
15
Burt.
to Burt.
Yeah, because I was by myself all the time in that
Yeah.
committee fighting.
For the taxpayers.
For the taxpayers, and Harriet helped me on a lot of those bills with her testimony, so please don't ever give up.
one of the interesting
15 to
things
Burt.
is that former selectmen or selectmen, former school teachers, former superintendents, and some, like McGilvery, who was the head of the NEA, run for office and get in.
And that's where they end up.
And so they go on the education committee if they're a teacher or a superintendent, because they're going to watch those education laws to protect themselves. And if they're selectmen or
Yep.
whatever, they get on the municipal.
They're all selectmen.
And I don't know how many times I have pointed out somebody is testifying to their own special interest. I mean, didn't I do that
Yes.
to Judy Silva and Cordell Johnson?
Well, I think that's,
I was so loved.
oh, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
To me, that's actually one of the things we have to start lobbying for in the State House, is to make sure that those committees aren't run by people and are dominated. It's good to have a couple selectmen in, because then if you have a bill that's gonna, like, totally screw them up, they could have an argument, say, well, this is what will happen if you do this, so you understand. That's good. But to have it dominated by selectmen so that is insane, because it's the committee, the legislature is there to represent the people, not their special interests.
Absolutely.
right.
They call it a citizens' legislature because you represent the citizens.
It's not anymore.
I know.
There were 17 members my first term. 15 of them were current or former selectmen or aldermen sitting on my committee.
That's wrong.
I mean, one of the aldermen in Manchester, Patrick Long, is on the executive board of the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Now, I believe under Gats's, I know 1 year, maybe 2, it was decided they no longer would put the dues in for the New Hampshire Municipal of $32,000. Saved the taxpayers $32,000. And Patrick Long got himself in the New Hampshire Municipal and elected to the executive board and to the legislature. Now tell me, since that's fiduciary responsibility, when you're elected, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizen, not to the group you belong to.
right.
But the bills got introduced by him, whatever they wanted. That, to me, is very bad.
Well, when the public loses its virtue, that's the kind of government you get, and that's what we're dealing with.
You know, that's actually one of my
true.
arguments for the Second Amendment. I know that's a little bit off subject.
No, not at all.
But for a long time, I thought I had the best argument against the Second Amendment. And that was that the entire Constitution was predicated on a moral society,
And that's right,
okay?
John Adams.
And if, exactly. So if it's predicated on a moral society, i.e. if people are moral and they are self-reliant and self-controlled, you
Self-regulated.
do not need a government to control them.
That's right.
As society breaks down and becomes more self-centered and selfish and immoral, government grows exponentially to maintain control.
That's
And
right.
if government, and if the Constitution is predicated on a moral society and we no longer have that,
That's right.
does that also preclude us from having the rights that we have in the Constitution, like the Second Amendment? But then I realized I never said that to anybody until I had the best argument against my own argument. And the best argument against that is, if society has become immoral and government has become immoral, the only thing more dangerous than an immoral society is an immoral government, and therefore the necessity for people to have the right to defend themselves against that government is more acute at this time in history than it was before.
And one guarantees the other, right? Because government is a mirror image of the people who elect the government.
I sometimes wonder how we get some of these people in Washington that's called the swamp, and it is. And then I read a book, and I think it was Jay Sutcliffe's book, but anyways, the person said, be careful of who you elect locally because they rise up. So you may say, well, he's only one of 5 selectmen, but they can get elected higher office until they're where you wouldn't want them.
No, I know. It was actually, gosh, who was the Russian that came to the United States? He wrote, I think, War and Peace?
You think it was
No.
Solzhenitsyn?
No.
Yes.
Is that Solzhenitsyn?
Yes, he's
He didn't
settled
know.
in Vermont.
Yeah, Solzhenitsyn.
It's
He
Solzhenitsyn.
spoke at Harvard,
Mhm.
and he was talking about you can't really end up with any, that's one of the things he did. He spoke at Harvard in, I think, 1978, and people thought he was going to go there and tell us all how horrible the communist system is, which he already knew and had already spoken about and already written about.
He wrote about it in the Gulag Archipelago.
Yeah.
Right.
But when he went to Harvard to speak, after being in the United States for a while, he spoke about what was going on in America. And one of the points he made is basically that America was people were becoming so self-centered that somebody who was actually truly honorable could no longer work their way up into a position of power, like a senator or Congress, or because the system was so corrupt that it would attack anybody that wasn't corrupt, wasn't likewise corrupt.
They weren't playing ball.
They
so to
weren't
speak.
playing ball.
See, that's one of the things that bothers me the most when I go to Concord to testify. The New Hampshire Municipal will come up to one of us in the hall, and as you know, I started Right to Know New Hampshire, and we have a good group going with
You started that?
and we have
She's
the,
awesome, isn't she?
Unstoppable.
we have the group
Have
testifying.
you thought of being cloned?
And out in the hall, Cordell grabs my president and vice president and says, if we give you this amendment and you agree to it, we can support your bill. I stamped my little feet and said, oh, no, you don't. You will never agree to anything they want to do.
Tried to do a deal.
Yeah.
Headed off at
You
the
don't
pass.
make deals on something that we're asking for the citizens. I don't care if it doesn't pass. I'll come back next year and the next year and the next year.
Right.
One of the things I'm very proud of is the legislators that, John knows this, will look at me as I'm coming down the hall and they'll say, what is she here for now?
What trouble did she bring with her
Yeah,
today?
I love it. You know, there's several Harriets up there that have that effect, and I respect every one of them because I know they're there for the people.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I
they
know.
keep coming back even though they get beat down every time.
Oh, yeah.
Because somebody must.
Yeah.
Somebody must.
Well, we won 8 right-to-know bills last year. This year, the municipal had enough people to kill them, and we only won 2.
You must love Bob Guida.
I think Bob is awesome.
Isn't he awesome?
He put the bills in.
He's
that
not
I
in your
asked-
district though, right?
No, Bob is Warren, New Hampshire, and they are
I know, but I
damn
don't know
lucky
how
to
close,
have him.
I don't know the proximity, so.
Warren, New Hampshire is above Plymouth to the
Oh,
west.
so it's up there.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah,
Toward Woodsville.
Really?
yeah. If
Huh.
you
So
went
I think
up,
it's 25. Route
Yes,
25. yeah.
25.
Yeah, I'll be
If you-
going there this week.
Why?
you went up.
I go to Vermont to help a friend.
John and I are both from Vermont. Got transplants.
Right, I
People
know.
Thank
call
goodness.
Flatlanders.
And now you can go back and they'll even pay you. Just agree to work at home for an out-of-state organization.
Oh, yeah, I heard that.
10 grand, there you
I
go.
know.
That is so ridiculous.
I write, I do double duty. I write the governor in Vermont, and I write the legislators in Vermont and give them hell about stuff. And I said, when I grew up in Vermont, all you Connecticut and Massachusetts people would have never got away with this.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true,
It's a true
too.
statement.
Now, can I briefly talk about
No,
the
sorry,
bill?
it's too late.
The,
Go for it, but-
the 6% that's going to be, they're going to sign it on the 18th of
good.
this month, June.
Which is 6% of what? What?
Well, the new lower interest rate on your delinquent taxes.
Okay.
It came out of Ways and Means, 23 to 0 to kill the bill. I want to give credit. Kevin Scully is the prime sponsor of this, representative down in Nashua.
My guy.
He
I
calls
see.
a mutual friend of ours, and he said, Don, what do I do? This bill's dead. He goes, what do you mean? Floor fight. 23 to 0 out of...
Don Gorman?
Yes.
Good for Don.
23 to 0 out of Ways and Means. You cannot overturn it. All of a sudden, he set up this floor fight. David Bates, I was part of it, and
Good for John.
who was Butler, a Democrat, supported this. And he gets up there, and I'm sitting there, Kevin Scully's wife is sitting with Don. I get up there and I said, I have been here 8 years, and this is the first bill I have pulled off the consent calendar, because they put it on consent. Don nudged Kevin's wife and said, we just won. She goes, how? Well, for one, John Burt's speaking. And second, this is his first bill he has ever pulled. Can you hear a pin drop in this place? And it was dead silence. And I gave my speech of why this should pass, and we overturned it.
Yeah.
And Kevin, when
Overturned
Kevin
it.
did this, and now the 18th, the governor is going to sign this because of Kevin Scully into law.
I'm
so-
going to have to give props to my rep from Nashua. I'm a Nashua guy, and I
Oh,
served-
Kevin's your rep?
And I
Oh.
served in Nashua, or in the legislature from 14 to 16,
Yeah.
and he succeeded me in a way, and I'm so proud of him.
Yes.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
This is such a good bill. I can tell you that as a selectman, and I spent 13 years as a selectman. One of the hardest things for people to do is to keep up with the tax rate and this penalty on top of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's insane. If somebody has fallen down on their luck and they're trying to keep their property and they're trying to make their tax payments and you're penalizing them at 12 and 18%, that is the hardest thing. I can't tell you how many people would come in and talk to us privately to help them out with this. And most of the
Let me
time-
ask you, devil's advocate, can a town charge less, or is this a...
Yes, we did, in fact.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, we
But
can.
most towns don't, because
Yeah, they
like
won't.
Nashua makes hundreds of thousands of dollars, Manchester
They sure
makes
do.
hundreds of thousands
So
of
you could
dollars
have a petition-
profit off this.
So you could have a petition to warrant article in your own town
Yes.
to drop that to 3% above prime, period.
Yep.
No, I don't think you can drop it that low.
No,
I think-
you've got
I
to
think it
keep
gives you
this
a
law in
range, doesn't
mind,
it?
but you
Isn't this a
can,
range?
yeah,
currently?
there's a range in there.
No.
Yeah,
currently.
well, once this is signed, this is going to be a set number, and what we really tried, and we're going to bring this back now, We want it 2%. All other government agencies, if you don't pay your taxes of whatever it is 2% above prime. So they're going to make 2%. So the taxpayers will never be without a dime of their money. Because what they're concerned about is what the New Hampshire Municipal Association and some of the towns like Manchester and Nashua that are making, hundreds of thousands of dollars profit, which they shouldn't make profit on people.
That's right.
They're saying big corporations or wealthy people may not pay their taxes because they can make money off this. I don't care if they do. I mean, they shouldn't do it because that is an abuse of their power.
Yeah.
But bottom line, the taxpayers will not lose a dollar because the town will borrow the money at 3%, and they're going to charge that business owner or whoever it is 6%, 3% more, so it's 6% total. So the taxpayers aren't out any money.
They're just not hosing the people that are because
The true people.
Yeah, because people fall behind for all kinds of reasons. They might move into a house and 10 years later, one of them gets sick and they can't keep their job. Like, I lost my eyesight, or enough of it, so they kicked me out of work. And then Aetna stopped paying my disability because they said that I could get a job as a secretary, making what I was making as a tool maker. Figure that out.
Nice of them.
Oh, yeah, they're very kind. So there's people like that. Now, I knew my physical problems were long-term, and I knew that was an eventuality, and so I had made sure that I didn't build up a lot of debt. So when I lost my job, we didn't end up losing the house. But if that had happened suddenly, and I had just bought a new truck and bought this and bought that, all of a sudden you're sucking pond water, and this town shouldn't be using that disadvantage to take you to the cleaners.
What I used in my floor speech, which is true, I said, why throw Granny to the curb? Granny just lost her husband of 62 years, and she's on hard times right now. She is trying to reorganize, and now she's behind on her taxes, and now the town's going to charge her 18%.
Right.
That isn't fair.
And to go with what John's saying, I was reading a history of New Hampshire, and back in the 1700s, 1800s, only property owners paid taxes.
Yes.
Only property owners.
That's right.
And only men. Okay. So, in reading through the history, one of the interesting points made by one of our illustrious founders was that the government shall never make money off its citizens.
They did here.
They were making money off its citizens in this. But if you remember White, a case quite a few years ago in the Supreme Court, the court said when they sold the property for taxes, they had to pay the owner the extra money.
Yes.
Right.
Well, that went to that piece that was written saying that the government can't make money off its citizens. It tells you at town meeting, when you vote for stuff, what the budget's going to be. And they can only tax based on what they need and has been voted by the people.
Yep.
And that recently came up in a newspaper article. So here's a government making hundreds of thousands in cities, Concord, Nashua, Manchester, Portsmouth, making money. Did that violate the Constitution? But I never saw a case come based on that.
There should be. I would think, here's another weird thing, if they're actually making money, why isn't the town paying taxes to the federal government for having a banking business?
Yeah, good idea.
Don't
Good
go
point.
there. Don't go there. We got enough problems.
Right? Because if they're breaking even, then there wouldn't be any taxes involved. But if they're actually profiting then the town should be responsible for taxes to the federal government.
Yes.
When that happens, where do they put the money in? What do they call it, a general fund?
Yeah, they're throwing it in the
They're
general.
throwing
fund.
it in revenue received, and here's one, I hate this so much,
called
this law, here's
surplus.
something you can put in.
All surplus.
Surplus, okay.
They say, well, they have to have a public hearing to expend revenue that came in after the budget was estimated.
Right.
Of course, at the public hearing, it's the conservation members who want that money, or it's the forest group that wants that money, or it's education.
Well, they might need to go to a conference,
Yeah, they might
In
need to go
Holland.
to a conference.
right?
So, they have me at a public hearing, and they say, oh, it's Harriet again. And then as soon as they close it down, they vote to spend it on what they wanted to.
Right.
No, they shouldn't be able to spend excess revenue that comes in.
No.
That should be carried over to reduce
Hey,
next
hey,
year's
hey,
budget.
why don't you sign up for state rep again?
I've been asked. But as you know, I had 2 knee replacements this year, and sitting for a half hour or an hour
I don't sit for a
makes
half
it
hour,
very
an hour.
stiff for me to stand up. And committees go on all day. I keep telling people, don't testify for more than 2 minutes, because people sitting there don't want to hear you for 20 minutes.
That's true, that's true. But no, you should. What about you?
I make more of an impact
Too
going
busy.
up as a
Too
citizen.
busy? What are you doing?
I have an in-home business that keeps
What do you
me
do?
pretty busy. I do customer support.
For?
I can't say. It wouldn't be proper.
We're,
Various.
we're very improper on
Taking-
this show.
I just can't
We-
drop
we-
the name of the company
Clearly
that I
very
work for.
ethical.
If you have a warranty on an appliance, they might call her customer support.
Or tech support. I do tech.
Oh, okay.
But I can't.
I
drop
should
the
do
name of
te-
the
I really
company-
think I should do
company that
tech
I have my
support.
Oh,
contract with.
ask her, she can tell you how to get hooked
No,
up.
I just want to do tech support and not know what I'm talking about.
He'll fit right in.
That'd be
Well, I
awesome.
mean, not
No,
her-
not,
not
no,
her
that's,
part
whoa,
of the marketplace.
not her.
Not her part of the marketplace.
That
but
would be so
some of the
awesome.
people, some of the
Tell you
places you end up
something.
calling.
Ask
That would be so
almost-
much fun.
Right.
I
You know,
almost
in
lost this
Goffstown, for them
in-home
to give you
contract
that. All right.
thanks to the New
I'm going
Hampshire
to.
General Court.
Why?
No
When
kidding.
the Democrats were in power, and I forget the year that, oh, but I do remember, I had to incorporate to keep my contract. It was the year 2010, and I got a call that said, we will not be renewing your contract. And why? Did I do something wrong? And they said, no, your state is just too difficult to work with. They use a lot of contracts throughout the nation, even in foreign countries. And the Democrats wanted a piece of what they said was Social Security money owed. Was it FICA?
Yeah,
And,
federal insurance.
yeah.
Communist.
They said,
right?
they said that companies like the one I work for had an advantage in hiring independent contractors because they don't pay benefits. You agree to work under those conditions because that's
You're a
the
subcontractor.
work you want to work under.
Yeah.
And they insisted that this type of arrangement, that they should be paying Social Security and unemployment and all that
All
good
this other
stuff.
crap.
Yeah. So I got the call and said that we will not be renewing your contract. Nothing you did, we can't work with your state government. And then I got a call about 2 weeks later from one of their lawyers saying, if you agree to incorporate and not in your state, you will have to go out of state to incorporate. So I'm incorporated in Delaware.
You're incorporated in Delaware.
Yep. I had, in order to keep my contract with this company, they want nothing to do with the state of New Hampshire.
That's pretty pathetic.
Yeah, it is.
That's something, actually be kind of cool to sit down and talk.
Well,
to
didn't the New Hampshire Municipal Association have some money down in Delaware and offshore
Oh,
also?
John, you just hit it.
The
Yeah, this is true.
The Secretary
really?
of
Oh, yes.
State's office, I've told you guys this before, has on its website the whole court case brought against the New Hampshire Municipal. New Hampshire Municipal is a 501c3, meaning nonprofit. And they can only do things under federal law according to that. And one
Aren't
of
they a
them is they
C4?
cannot have a corporation,
Aren't they a C4?
501c3.
How can they lobby? You can't lobby under a C3.
Start
Because
a
they
PAC?
add a C4 and a C6 under that
underneath it.
section.
Okay.
But the New Hampshire Municipal opened 3 corporations in order to hide a huge amount of money that they had collected under the health trust. Remember I told you how much we paid? Anyways,
Tens of millions.
the Secretary of State has a securities division. And some friend of his came from California and he says, look at, you're one of the richest states with this securities. And Bill says, all of a sudden my eyes opened and there was $600 million out there floating. So anyways, they started checking into it. I think it took about 4 years to travel through the court. It ended up, they appealed, went to the Supreme Court, and they were ruled against. First of all, I loved the Supreme Court's decision because they said they were a quasi-governmental and responsible under the right to know law. So they have to answer questions under right to know. And ordered them to pay $73 million in money back to the towns and cities they had collected health payments from. They collected money that raised the health costs to all of us taxpayers, and then used it to build the building up on Triangle Drive, beautiful building, to send their people all over.
Holland?
Yep.
Vegas.
Holland would be nice, though. 'Cause then you can, like, put your finger in the dikes and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I got a
and-
niece that lives there. Anyways, the point of it all is,
It's tulips.
that
Tulips.
didn't just stop at 73 million. Next year it was 17 million they had to pay back. But they played a trick. They went to towns and cities and said, we haven't got that money on hand, so how about if you take a payment holiday and you don't have to pay us all that you will owe us next year
Dues.
in health
Dues.
trust money,
Oh.
health payment. You know what the trouble with that was? That money still got budgeted at that amount. The excess money coming in was the revenue that I just said they had a public
Surplus.
hearing and allowed people to spend. My friend, when I told him about this, checked the supervisory unit 16, which is Exeter, Brentwood, and found out they got $2.3 million, but they still budgeted the $2.3 million in the budget for health insurance.
Wow.
So the taxpayers
trick.
got rooked here, and they got rooked there. So
They
I
got robbed.
called,
Isn't that
Gary, did I
embezzlement?
not tell the New Hampshire Judiciary Committee, why would you do amendments for lawbreakers?
I do remember something like that, but I didn't know what the heck you were talking about. I doubt that I understood.
I got a call from one of your committee members saying to me, Harriet, how could you say that? I said, because it's true. Go look at the Secretary of State's website.
The more you actually do follow the money, the stranger this gets.
So help me God, they had 3 corporations.
Sure, you wear do you wear Kevlar on a regular basis? Seems like it'd be smart.
It's made of Kevlar.
She's made of Kevlar.
Yeah, she is.
Hey, we only got 2 minutes, so you gotta wrap up your train of thought.
Well, I've only covered the New Hampshire Municipal tonight. Now we've got a sister group called the New Hampshire School Boards Association.
Yeah, but I'm sure they're honest.
After all, they're for those
It's
kids.
for the children. It's for the children, Eric.
We're absorbed.
I don't know why you would even
They
question.
moved their office into the NHMA building, and they work together hand in hand. That's one of the things.
Probably pay you high rent.
Oh, yeah.
They
That's
probably
one
bought
of
the building, then
things
charged
people
themselves
have to-
rent.
Yeah.
No, and John will tell you this. Lobbyists will gather 3 or 4 of their friends and say, you believe like me in this, so we'll all testify to this, and they'll all go before the committee. And then some little interested citizen goes and says something, and they say, oh, that's just a person.
That's just one person.
The only reason they fear me to any degree is that the press will follow me, and I write letters to the editor.
And you tell the truth.
I always tell the
The
truth,
truth is
because I
the,
have the memory to make it last a long time.
There's something about, anyway, yeah, I won't remember that quote. We only have a couple seconds left.
Yes,
John, thank you very much for hanging out.
thank you for having me.
Representative Burt, always good to see you.
Yes.
Harriet, thank you very much for coming in and enlightening us.
And for being a
Dianne,
warrior
thanks for
and
this.
your
Nice meeting
expertise. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
Wonderful
It's
to meet
Eric,
you.
right? Eric.
Still is, yeah.
Eric.
Half of Eric, apparently.
Half of Eric,
Yeah.
30%, no, 40, 50%.
Just a hologram. I can't believe you shook the hand, dude.
No, actually, you can't tell because he's sitting, he has no legs. It's just, he's like nothing there.
I got
Anyway,
no strings on
I
it.
wish people could see this all over the state, because
They can.
I have people
Yes.
call me from
Upstate.
Conway, Madison,
Say goodbye.
Littleton.
Good night, Harriet.
Good night.
We got to say
Good
goodbye.
night.
Thanks, folks.